Rev up your engines!
Now, here's why you shouldn't buy a rebuild engine from a discount auto parts store. Dave Wilson just sent me an email. On 06/01/2021, I purchased a rebuild engine from O'Reilly Auto Parts in Colorado. Now, 13,000 miles later, the front engine seal's leaking. People at O'Reilly said they're using cheap parts on the seals, right? But now, the rear main seal's leaking, you got to pull the transmission off. I just found out that the engine is falling apart inside and I need a new engine. At this point, I can only see for O'Reilly to provide a complete new engine and have it installed. As I've warned people over the ages, it is not a smart idea to buy a remanufactured or rebuilt engine from a discount auto parts store. They're just buying them from somebody else and marking it up. And as even the guy at the store told you, they use cheaper parts when they're doing it. Rebuilding an engine is a very labor-intensive, using high-skilled workers. But these days, hey, they do a lousy job in most of these places, especially the discount ones. You put 16,000 miles or so on it, and it's falling apart already. I see it all the time. So I tell people, don't buy them from these discount auto parts stores. They're just the middleman who are marking it up. The people they're buying them from, they want to pay the little as possible. So the people rebuild them are going to do them as cheap as they can, because they're like, well, these are all going to O'Reilly. They're paying us hardly anything, so don't put good parts. Just buy them by the crate, cheap parts, and throw them on. Rebuilding an engine is an immense, complicated, high-skilled labor thing, and when there's money pressure to do it cheaper, you end up with crap. Now, I hope they give you another one, but here's the problem. They're just going to give you another one of the same pieces of crap they gave you in the first place. Maybe it'll only last 16,000 miles and break again. Force them to do it. I mean, they sold to the engine. It's not holding up. A lot of these companies should have nothing to do with selling remanufactured engines, but they just see it's a way for them to make money doing nothing. The company delivers the engine to them. They don't build it. They're just the middleman selling it, and they got to keep the prices down, so the quality of the work is down too. I don't advise ever buying a remanufactured engines from any of these discount auto parts stores. AMW BSG says, are magnetic sump plugs any good or just a gimmick? Thanks. You take it out and you see metal fragments around it. Oh, good, there's metal fragments. No, bad. That means your engine's worn. You don't want to see any metal. If there's metal fragments, that means the metal's worn. It's too late, right? You have an oil filter in your car. It's going to filter out metal pieces. I mean, if you want to be a real fanatic, when you change your oil, take your oil filter off, turn it upside down in a bowl, let it drain. Then cut it in half with a hacksaw and look inside and see if there's any metal pieces all in the filtration, meaning your engine's going bad. Putting a magnetic plug isn't going to fix anything. It's just magnet. It'll get some of the little pieces, but it's too late then. Absolutely too late. And if you really want to know about what shape your car is in, sample the oil. Send it to one of those oil sample companies. They do it in a couple of days. They give you a printout and explain what kind of shape your engine is by analyzing the oil. And they do very good jobs of it. Bart Slegmelin says, hi from the Netherlands. Scotty, my 06 Lexus GS300 uses 1.5 liters per 2,000 kilometers. Can I do something about it? Well, the only thing you can really do is change the PCV valve. If it's stuck open, it'll suck oil and it'll burn. If that doesn't fix it, it's an oil burn. You need to add the oil. But you could use the new GF6 oil. Put that in. It is made to lubricate the engine better, and it might lower the consumption. If it does, great. You can thank me. If it doesn't, just keep adding it, because otherwise you would have to rebuild the engine, which on Lexuses goes anywhere from $5,000 to $40,000. Those engines are very expensive. If you want to get a brand new engine and even rebuild them, can cost anywhere from $7,000 to $14,000. It's expensive. A little bit of oil burning. Oil's cheap. You can keep adding it. Hello, guys, says, my transmission leaks oil even after I place the oil and replace the seal in a Kia Rio. Okay, what seal did you replace? If you're talking about replacing the seals on the drive shafts, okay, but it's still leaking, your rear main seal is shot, where the engine bolts onto the transmission. You'd have to pull the transmission off the vehicle and replace it. Now, on the other hand, for years, I've been using this product, AT205 Reseal. You pour the sealer in the transmission, and sometimes if that seal is leaking inside the transmission, it'll stop dripping. It's amazing stuff. I've been using it for decades. Sometimes it's hard to find, but Amazon usually sells the stuff for maybe $18 a bottle or so, and you just pour it in and see what happens. In 300 miles, it stops leaking. It did its job. Jonathan Randall says, what do you think of a Ford 300 inline-six? Okay, it's one of the best engines they ever made for a long life. Not a lot of horsepower, and that's why they don't make them anymore. I had one. It ran forever. They actually used that 300 i6 in dump trucks. They got enough torque to pull a dump truck. Not very fast, but they last and last and last. But of course, they don't get the gas mileage of modern engines. They don't have the horsepower, so they'll never bring them back. But they can still run. My grandson's friend, he's got one. He paid $1 an old F-100, and it's got that engine with a one-barrel carburetor, and it still runs down the road. So that says a lot. Sedona Jade says, I got a 2012 Honda Civic LA. It idles at 1,500 RPM when I start it and slowly goes down after it's running. Is it normal? Now, if you think it's too long, it's very easy to clean the throttle and the MAP sensor. A sticky throttle will do that. And it's just throttle spray cleaner. I've got a video. It's called Make Your Car Run Better with a Little Spray Cleaner. Scotty. Type that on YouTube. Watch the video. You can buy that spray cleaner. You can clean it yourself. And if it's sticking, it'll idle high just a lot less longer. It'll come down faster. Now, if it doesn't, it takes a little while. Live with it's not going to hurt anything. But a dirty, sticky throttle will do that. And hey, what's that? A 2012. So you're talking about an 11-year-old car. It may have never been cleaned. You need to do it every so many years. And if you clean that throttle and it doesn't stick anymore, that's exactly what it'll do. It'll go back to normal a lot faster. Jeannie says, Scotty, how safe a rear-wheel drive to drive in Florida rain? I'm thinking of buying a 2004 Lexus LS 430. Rear-wheel drive have a tendency to skid more in the rain. One of the reasons they went to front-wheel drive vehicles is because they handle better. The thing about cars it's more efficient to pull a car than it is to push a car. And if it's front-wheel drive, you're pulling the car. Where if it's rear-wheel drive, it's pushing the car. But you're talking about a 2004 Lexus LS 430. That baby's got pretty good traction control built into it. And it shouldn't slide around if it's still working. Now, I mean, you're talking about what? A 19-year-old car. So maybe it doesn't work anymore. But if the traction control still works, you're not going to have any problems with it. They put excellent traction control in it. It's just a matter of does it still work being that old. Arthur J says, I got an 05 Grand Marquis. The wiper motor has been exchanged 4 times. I need another. Well, you're obviously buying rebuilt ones, right? Buy a new one next time. Don't buy a rebuilt one. The rebuilt ones are rebuilt in factories by clowns. Half the time they come from Mexico or some other place, and it's poorly done. You just keep replacing them because they're not rebuilding them correctly. Now, of course, look at the wiring harness. Make sure there's no corrosion, and make sure the wiper motor is grounded, because if the ground wire isn't grounded tight, it'll strain and overheat, and it will keep burning out the new one. So it could be you got a bad ground wire. Check the ground wire first. But if it's not that, you're just getting cheap rebuilt ones, and they will just keep going one after another because rebuilt stuff these days is garbage half the time. Adam Johnson said, Scott, I got an 05 Acura. Need a steering rack, tie rod, and control arm bushing replaced. Is there anything I can do cheaper to prevent the wheel from buckling for now and finish it later? All right, well, what you want to do is, if your tie rod and the bushings are actually broken, cracked, and wobbling, change them first. Because if you fix that, the rack itself, it might not be that bad. What you can do with a rack, you can, if it's clogged up, you can flush it. I got a video, how to fix binding power steering. Scotty, watch that, and you can see you can flush it out yourself. And that'll fix binding in the power steering if there's goop inside, right? That will happen. But always change, pull the wheels and they move back and forth. Tie rods wiggles, change that first. Bushings ripped, replace it. Always do the physical, obvious things you can see first if you want to fix something. And then worry about the rest later. Mosquito says, can I get a rear-wheel drive truck in the winter? I got a 2019 Frontier V6. Bought it in Texas. But now I'm moving to Pennsylvania. I noticed being driven there, there's snow and ice with steep hills. Would a front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive be a necessity? You got a pickup truck with a V6 engine. It's a relatively powerful V6 engine, right? And you got rear-wheel drive. Most of your weight's in the front, the engine and then transmission, right? What's in the back? The rear wheels. Spinning with less weight on them. Now, it depends on how bad the snow gets. I had people bring me some from Ohio here down to Tennessee, and they had bags of salt in the bed to keep more weight, and it's somewhat better. See if your Frontier has good traction control. If it does, you might be able to get away with putting some bags of sand, whatever, in the back, in the bed to give it more weight so there's more weight on the tires. And definitely, if you're going to drive it in Pennsylvania in the winter, you're going to have to buy snow tires for the back, at least, so you can get through. But if you got traction control, you might be able to make it out that way. Well, if you saw the news, Toyota built more cars than ever last month. Even though all this crazy stuff that's going on, they produced 833,104 vehicles last month, which is 1.5% more than last year, which was a record last year. Now, all businesses are conservative, so they warned. They said, well, supply problem in the future because, you know, that COVID thing's going on in China now, I guess, and they're shutting down factories, and they get parts from China just like everybody else. Now, on the other hand, Nissan, their production went down 23%. Didn't go up, it went down. And their sales went down 26%. Well, what the heck? At least the sales went down more than what they built, so they didn't have people not being able to get cars. They built more than they sold. I've had customers buying brand new Toyotas now. They haven't had any problems getting them. One guy went to the dealer. He wanted a Corolla. There it was. He bought it and brought it home. So, hey, they're keeping things up there. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.